You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast. We talk with adventurers from around the globe to bring you the inspiration and motivation you need to get started in the outdoors or to keep you moving if you're already there. Now here's your host, Kurt Linville.
Hello everyone, and happy Monday. Also, I hope your Easter was fantastic. I know that mine was. Matter of fact, it's still Easter when I'm recording this, just by a little bit. We went to church this morning, which was amazing, and then we skied this afternoon, which was amazing, and then we had paella, which we cooked on the grill on the front deck, which was amazing. Just such a beautiful, beautiful day, and I'm so thankful for it. You know, Easter is about a lot more than bunny rabbits and candy eggs. Never really got that connection anyway. Easter is about death. It's about coming back. It's about second chances and new hope and new life. And it's interesting because Melissa Strong is our guest, and in this episode, she actually shares a near-death experience that she had. And Melissa has written a book about what her old life was like and what her new life now is like. And it's amazing about rock climbing. It's a comeback story. And Melissa launched her book right, meaning she has a publisher. Her book is everywhere. You can get it anywhere you want to get it. And she has all the right types of promotions to make sure that people know the book exists. I, on the other hand, when I wrote my book a year and a half ago, did none of that. So I just put it on Amazon so people could get a hold of it. And I need to get the word out. So I have a special request. Those of you who bought my book and read it, and I know a bunch of you did, could you jump on Amazon and just leave a little review? Talk about how that book may have or may not have impacted you. It would be fantastic. It would help me a ton to help get the word out. My book is about helping other people. Melissa's book is too. It's about sharing her experience so that others could be encouraged by it. So please leave a book review for 99 words, my book. But while you're there, leave a review for Melissa's book as well. It's called Climbing Through, and this is going to be a fantastic episode. You're going to love it. Let's just dive right in. I have returning guest Melissa Strong with us, and Melissa was originally on visiting with Mason, and I have not had the chance to visit with Melissa yet, so I'm excited to learn more about her amazing life. Melissa is a rock climber, and in 2017, she suffered an accident that cost her several of her fingers, and she remains a rock climber. She's lived a life of adventure, exploring different climbing venues that are a little less well-known, a little bit more off the beaten path. And I'm excited to visit with her about these venues and what climbing is like there, as well as about her book, which is called Climbing Through. Melissa, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, Melissa, just to kind of orient us, I know a lot of our listeners probably heard your episode back from 2020, and we were just talking about how that was not our favorite year. And so we're hopeful that this year is a lot better than 2020 for everyone. But can you just give us a brief overview of what your book Climbing Through is about? Because I think that's going to be a lot of what we discuss today.
Well, the Climbing Through is about, obviously, my accident opening the restaurants. So I suffered a severe electric accident where I was connected to the electric chain for about 20 seconds and super lucky to be alive. I died a little bit and came back, seeing the tunnel in the forest and you name it, and I got a chance to come back and try. But before I got to try, I saw burnt bones sticking out of my hands, and I needed to get help. So we cover my medical journey, which included some innovative procedures like sewing my arms together, and was in the hospital for a bit. And once I got out of the hospital, the surgeries were not over, but I had a restaurant to open. And I also, the entire time, hoped, and can I get back to rock climbing? When they first woke me up in the hospital and told me I'd only have 4 fingers, my index fingers and my pinkies, I still thought about climbing, but I kind of had to slam the lid on that and put it in a closet in my mind for a little bit. Because when you hear that you're only going to have 4 fingers, yeah, climbing was always a part of me. I was a sponsored climber at that point. But obviously, Four Fingers makes you think, well, can I even turn a doorknob and get into the restaurant that is under construction right now that I need to open? So it talks about my medical journey, obviously the mental tools that I needed to dig deep within myself to get through that journey and open the restaurant and get back into climbing eventually.
Wow. It's amazing to me when I meet someone like you who's been through a serious setback, a hardship, a huge loss, and then to hear the rest of the story, how life goes on and how, you can restore your life to the new normal. I don't want to sound trite, but it's encouraging, Melissa, to hear about the way that you did persevere. And I'm really interested in hearing more of your story. When did you start climbing?
I started climbing in 2000. I moved to Estes Park in 1996 and met a lot of rock climbers, and I just thought they were crazy. I thought they were silly. It's okay, have fun doing that. You'll never catch me doing it. I've actually always been slightly afraid of heights as well, so I was never that interested in it. And then in 2000, I shared this story in the book that I was living a pretty carefree life, kind of continuing college, closing the bars down, waiting tables, taking my money to the local bars and just having a good time with my friends, having dance parties until dawn and not really caring much about what was around me in Colorado. I mean, as you've been to Estes Park, you see how beautiful it is there.
Yes.
Maybe every once in a while I'd go on a very short hike, but that was about it. And one day I tried to run around Lake Estes and I couldn't. And I was 26 years old. I couldn't even run a half mile without thinking I was going to die or something bad was going to happen to me. I was such a different person. And at that point, I just said, hey, you've got to do something to change your life. You can't continue on in this fashion. This is not healthy and not good for you overall and in general. So that day I swore that I would do something to change things up. And I had friends that had always asked me to go rock climbing. So when I got home, I called up my great friend Bronson and I said, hey, when are you climbing again? Can I go climbing with you? And she said, yeah, a group of us gals are getting out on Wednesday. And I'm like, great, I'll be there. And then I hung up and made golf lessons for the same day because I was still unsure about whether climbing was going to click for me or not. And I just wanted to do something that was outside and physical. And so I gave myself a few choices with this, monumental decision.
Wow. So I find that fascinating. I have heard a lot of stories over the years about people who are kind of had their aha moment, their light bulb moment, and that's what got them into the adventure sport that they eventually, focused on for years to come. But yours sounds really, really quick. Was it a longer decision before you said, no, life's got to change? Or was it, I tried to run and couldn't?
I mean, it really was that moment. That moment I decided this was all going to change. Beforehand, I did try climbing, because I'm in bars hanging out after work and one of the summer guides would come through and be, hey, maybe little hit on me scenario where it's like, oh, you should come out climbing with me tomorrow. And I think I said yes once or twice. And then you're hungover on Lumpy Ridge, baking on a slab saying, what the heck am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? So, I mean, I had kind of dipped my toes in the water a tiny bit, but I never had that urge that, hey, things have to change until that moment. And so it really was just like a switch that got flipped.
Wow. Well, good on you.
Well, it's nice that I listened, right? I mean, a lot of people may not listen. I don't know. But I'm excited that I listened because I wouldn't want to see... I always look at life as like those choose your own adventure books, if you remember that from when you were a kid. I'm dating myself for sure here, and you could turn to page 135 to follow the vampire. So I wouldn't want to see what my life was like if I, turned to page 25 and said, screw it.
Wow. So you tried climbing with the gals, and is that when you actually fell in love with it, or was it kind of a I'll try this again, I'll try it again, and how'd that turn
It
out?
was that moment. It was that day climbing with the gals. They put up a top rope. We went to a crag called the Monastery, which is partway down Highway 34, leaving Estes Park, heading to Loveland, outside of Drake, and some bolted routes, and so a small sport climb. And one of them had put up a top rope, and I was on the top rope and didn't have a lot of faith in what I was doing. I was completely terrified, and I couldn't even keep up with everyone on the hike carrying gear. So, I had a lot of trepidation building up to this point. And then, have the climbing shoes on and approach the rock, and all of a sudden I started to climb, and also I didn't have the muscles to do what I was doing, so my legs start shaking, and your hands are sweating and you can't hold on. And my friend Bronson, who was belaying me, said, just sit back on the rope. It's, take a break, rest. And of course, I didn't really have any faith in that, but I did because I had no choice because I couldn't hold on to the rock anymore. And as I just hung on that rope and stared at the top of the climb, something in me was so determined to get to the top of that climb. Obviously, I wasn't doing it with any style or grace or in any fashion that you'd really want to remember, but I knew I wanted to get up there. Eventually I pulled back on the rock and I got to the top of the climb. And right then I knew I would be climbing probably as long as I could.
So that's another light bulb moment, just back to back. It sounds like this is a turning point for your whole life.
100%, definitely.
How are you different now?
Like I said, I wouldn't want to know who I'd be if I turned to page 25 and just continued to smoke cigarettes and drink. I have no idea. Maybe at some point there would have been another catalyst or moment, but I'm happy that my life changed that day, and I feel like I'm a better person for it, for the obvious. I mean, for health reasons. I'm now a bit older and I'm still climbing. And I still push myself. I'm still an athlete. And I think that is only going to help benefit me as I continue to age. So I think just health-wise, just feeling good in your body, feeling strong, feeling fit, feeling mentally good as well. Because climbing is a big escape from a lot of things, a lot of stress, a lot of things in life. Just getting out into the outdoors and enjoying what you love to do, it really helps change and shape you and gets you away from all of the other horrible things that are happening around you. So I think it's made me a better person overall.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I used to use climbing quite a lot just to blow off steam, to reset, recenter, refocus, and to get the internal fortitude to go back and to the grind and grind some more. It really has been a beautiful, beautiful part of especially what I did as a younger man. And it's not that I quit, but I just took on other things. And so climbing hasn't always been my primary focus. But I used to climb a lot in the Lumpy Ridge. I loved it back in there. And we would boulder around without ropes. Can you describe climbing around Estes Park, just so people get a feel for it?
You have a little bit of everything around Estes. You mentioned Lumpy Ridge, and Lumpy Ridge is actually older than the Rocky Mountains. It's a beautiful ridge that's behind, like kind of a backdrop behind Estes Park to the north. And then, to the west are the Rocky Mountains. So you have this really cool kind of backbone ridge. It's really crystally sharp, kind of pinkish, brownish granite with some really beautiful lichen, green. It's got a lot of nice green, like bright green lichen here and there. And that is mostly trad climbing, and it is mostly, I guess if you're familiar with trad climbing, to me, it was one of the things I didn't love the most. And it was painful because you're jamming your hands in your fingers and your feet into cracks, into the feature of the rocks to haul yourself up it. I did lots of routes on Lumpy when I first started, and yes, there's boulders scattered beneath this ridge, which I just didn't focus on at all. I was a rock climber, I was a rope climber, and that's what I focused on. In the park, you get a lot of alpine climbs, so you can do anything from summiting Long's Peak, whether you're hiking or on a rope. And then you also have some of the best bouldering in the world in Rocky Mountain National Park as well, because all of these mountains and big cliffs exfoliate. So then you get these massive talus fields and rocks all around that you can boulder on. And eventually I did go from rope climbing to bouldering, and mostly that was just simply because I worked in restaurants. I wasn't a weekend warrior. I couldn't find a lot of partners all the time on the days I had off during the weekdays. And I just loved climbing so much that I wanted to climb on my days off. And eventually a friend of mine introduced me to bouldering. And once I found bouldering, I realized, I can find problems that are reasonable for me to climb on my own. And that my focus kind of changed to bouldering pretty quickly in my climbing career.
So there are different scales that are used for bouldering versus rock climbing. I mean, people hear about 512, 513, 514. That's the rock climbing scale, but bouldering uses the V scale. Can you explain that one?
Well, the V scale was actually created in Waco Tanks, and that's another place that we go and climb in the winter. So John Sherman, his nickname was the Verm, starting with a V, and he did a lot of the bouldering developing in Waco Tanks, and V for Verm came up, was the precursor to V0, V1, V2, and that is a different grade, because when you're trad climbing or sport climbing, there's a lot of climbing you do before you get to the crux of the problem. And the crux of the problem is the hard part, and that's usually what earns it its grade. And sometimes there's multiple cruxes. But bouldering is kind of like taking that crux of a rock climb that you've climbed 20 feet to get to that crux. It takes that crux and it's right off the ground, right there on that boulder in front of you. You're not using ropes, you're using the foam mats that you fall on. And what I liked about it, I think it just fit my personality as well, is that I could just sit there with the rock. I could stare at the rock. I could stare at the footholds, the handholds, and figure out what was going to work for me, because not every sequence works for every person. We're all different shapes, sizes, lengths, reaches, you name it. And obviously the beta that my husband would use, being 5'10" with a +6 reach, is completely different than what I'm going to use. And so I just really enjoyed the fact that I could just be alone with the rock and face the boulder problem. So face the problem and figure the puzzle out. It was fantastic, which I think it's kind of sad today with all the videos of boulder problems that most people go right to videos of beta, and they're not having that experience of just kind of that one-on-one with the rock and that figuring process.
I agree. I hadn't thought of that, though, Melissa, until you just mentioned it. And something else I want to point out is you immediately start talking about problem solving with rock climbing. I think that people that have never tried rock climbing often think, they're using ropes to go up a cliff. But there's a nuance to rock climbing, and that is that something that you can't climb at first, you solve. You solve it by doing what you just said, almost meditating on the problem until you learn how to get your body in the right position, your balance in the right place to succeed at something that's very, very difficult. People think about, well, you just have a rope, right? But you're saying, no, I'm bouldering without a rope, and I'm solving very difficult problems. I think that's part of what makes the sport so exciting, but I think a lot of people don't know about it.
I agree, 100%. And I think if it was kind of just remote, like just robotic, like pulling and going, I don't think half of the people would be as in love with it as they are. But it's that cerebral part of it, which sounds really strange, but golf and climbing kind of translate in that way, because everything has to be so precise and everything has to be just right to execute even one move. That it's more cerebral than people give it credit for. People, I think, just would look at someone and say, no, I'm not strong enough and it's a muscle thing. And yeah, muscles, of course, come in play. If you don't have the muscles, it's going to be hard, and you can build those over time. But I think the figuring and the cerebral part of it really grabbed me.
Let's shift gears just a little bit. You mentioned Hueco, and this is a climbing place that I didn't know about, and that's my bad for not being caught up. But tell us about Hueco. What's going on there?
Well, I do talk a lot about Hueco Tanks in the book, climbing through, because it was such a huge part of our climbing lives. Now I say our because, chapter 8, I believe Adam comes in the book. So I was climbing before I met my husband, and it's funny, I had never gone to Hueco Tanks. I intentionally avoided going to Hueco Tanks, and I would pass it up to go climbing in Bishop in the winter, because Hueco Tanks is a historic state park, and the historic piece of it makes it real tricky. So it's 860 acres of some of the best bouldering in the world. A lot of boulderers would say, like, top 3 bouldering places in the world would be the Rocklands in South Africa, Fontainebleau, France, and Hueco Tanks. And you kind of put it in order of, I guess, your style and what you enjoy mostly, but about, the type of climbing, because they're all very different. They all produce very different type of climbing. But Hueco is a historic site first and foremost. So Native American rock art and artifacts are all over Hueco Tanks. People had been visiting there for over 10,000 years and living there and making homes there and finding dwellings there and grinding food. So there's gigantic mortar holes along with pottery shards, along with rock art, all throughout Hueco Tanks. And so it's protected by the state of Texas. Texas Park and Wildlife owns it, and there is a lot of hoops to jump through if you want to climb there. There's 4 mountains, and North Mountain is self-guided access, so you can go there without a guide. You go to Hueco Tanks, you have to have a reservation to climb there, because there's only 70 people allowed per day to use North Mountain. And you watch a video, and then you're able to climb there on your own. But the rest of the areas, East Mountain, West Mountain, and East Spur, are all guided access only. So you have to have a climbing guide with you. Now, this climbing guide, some of them, act like actual climbing guides. Like, I'm going to teach you how to climb. Sure, you can get that experience if you want. But the number one aspect of going through guide training in Hueco Tanks is you are a protector of the resource. So like, as a guide, I'm there, I can take out only 10 people at once, and I would talk to them before we leave the parking lot and explain what a Hueco is. Hueco is a depression in the rock that holds water, which is why people, along with, all the other features, the shelter, the shade, but why Native Americans gathered there is because there's water in the middle of the desert. So obviously that was a huge feature, which brought game as well. So I would explain to you what a Hueco is. I would tell you not to step in them, because these tiny little creatures live in them and lay their eggs that lay dormant. And then when the water comes, there are these like kind of little fairy shrimp that live in there. So you definitely don't want to step in a Hueco. And then we also talk about, the importance of the fact that we're allowed to have access to climb in such a archaeological significant site. And we talk about the desert, the fragile desert environment, and crash pads, and how to place them and not to drag them. The list goes on of the things that you tell someone before you take them out in the backcountry climbing. But then you guide them around for an enjoyable day. So we've had a rock climbing guiding concession there for 20 years this year, called Wagon Wheel. It's where my husband went before I met him. Every winter he would spend his winter in Hueco Tanks. So it was one of the things when we met, he said, just so you know, this is what I do in the winter, and hopefully we can do this together. And because of all of those rules with the reservations and the limited access and the guiding, like I said, I had historically avoided it. So once we got married, we had our first season in Hueco Tanks, and I fell in love with it. And we bought some land and applied to have our own guiding concession, also, of course, going through guide training ourselves. So it's a really special place. It's a gift that we have access to be able to climb in such a special place.
Have you ever gone through all the hassles of getting on the plane, security, luggage, long waits at the airport, all that kind of stuff? And then when you finally arrive at your destination, not only are you worn out, but you also might feel a little bit disconnected. I know that I do when I hopscotch around the planet on a plane. That's one of the reasons why I love the great American road trips, where you get to drive from one place to another and connect all of those dots. You get to experience the changes in the terrain and the weather and the people and the communities. This is one reason that I am excited to present to you our new sponsor, Outdoorsy. Outdoorsy offers a different way to travel. With Outdoorsy, you can rent an RV or a camper and turn the drive into part of the vacation on your schedule with your people and with way more flexibility. Listen, most trips focus on getting somewhere. Outdoorsy is about the part in between. With Outdoorsy, you can rent an RV or a camper and travel on your own terms. No TSA lines, no strict schedules, no rushing through airports. And for extra convenience, Outdoorsy even offers RV delivery and setup in many locations, so you can enjoy the experience without having to worry about the logistics. Outdoorsy connects travelers with trusted RV owners across the country, making it easy to find a rig that fits your style and budget, and I might add, that also fits with the people and the pets that you want to take with you. So when you're ready for a trip that actually feels like a break, head to Outdoorsy.com. Outdoorsy is currently running a special promotion for listeners. Use the promo code ASP at checkout to take advantage of this limited time offer. That's Outdoorsy.com, promo code ASP. It sounds fascinating to me that you can connect not just with a rock, not just with a desert, but you're connecting with kind of deeper human history.
Hugely.
When you're there.
Hugely. And, it's important. We look at it as very important as guides to share that with people.
And we have to talk about Northwest Arkansas, which is where you are today, right? You said you're in Eureka Springs?
Yep, on Beaver Lake in Eureka Springs. So this is new. We only just came here a few months ago. And as much as we love Waco and as much as we love Rocky, we have been climbing in both of those places for a really long time. And just wanted to change things up and explore the sandstone of Northwest Arkansas. So we're really excited to be here. We've been getting out as much as we can. Obviously, the book coming out in March has given me a little side work to do, but we've been really enjoying it.
Well, I love Northwest Arkansas, and those are my old stomping grounds because I grew up in northeastern Oklahoma. And so I would jump in my car and head east into the Ozarks every chance I got. And I just have so many great memories. Such a beautiful place. A friend of mine that actually grew up in the Ozarks, tell me if this is fitting, but he used to say, well, the Rockies are huge and jagged and fierce, almost masculine. And he says, but the Ozarks, they're like a warm hug. They wrap around you, and there's a feminine quality to them that he found really appealing.
Yeah, that's funny. I like that. Definitely. I mean, when you get into the Rockies, it's real deal. It's high altitude. You get a lot of exposure. Where what we've found around here are gentle rolling hills with amazing sandstone everywhere. So I can see that.
Yeah. I used to climb around Steel Creek and the Buffalo River and places like that, and also do a little cliff jumping and in those areas, and I just loved it. Such a beautiful part of the United States. And people say it's the oldest mountain range in the U.S. I would say it's at least the oldest large mountain range in the U.S., right? There are some remnants of older mountain ranges, I'm sure, but the Ozarks are ancient, much, much, much older than the Rockies. And that's also kind of cool to realize the depth of deep, deep history, natural history there.
Yeah, super cool. I'm excited to learn more about it and the history in general here. So far, it's been awesome. The rock is great. You have southern sandstone and you have some limestone as well. We've been finding some nice limestone bands closer to Eureka that have been fun to kind of develop and climb on, as well as going out to the stuff in the Ozarks that are a little further away, like in Jasper and Cowell. And yeah, we're just getting to know the lay of the land and seeing how my hands work with southern sandstone because I've lost fingers, because I have different sized thumbs, because I don't have flexor tendons in my thumbs, so they don't bend anymore. I can't just like walk up and climb on anything. I've got to figure it out. I got to figure out if my hands can even hold these holds. So initially, like after the accident, there was a lot of days of hiking places and being like, whoa, Melissa can't climb this. Melissa can't grab this. And yeah, I tried to keep the best attitude possible, but it was challenging. And beyond challenging, you know, you're going out there with all your friends who you used to climb with, who you used to excel with, or, you know, even climb better than. And now here you are, like, can I even climb a warm-up? So that was a hard lesson to learn and to swallow and to take in and to not internalize as I was getting back into climbing. And then over the years, as my brain-body connection started to rewire, climbing opened up further. And then I could grab slopers and things that I never thought I could hold on to before. So it's funny, it's coming to a new area, climbing on new rock is in a way taking me back to some of those old struggles. But so far we have found a handful of things, you know, that I can climb on. So I'm excited.
That's very interesting. It was one of the questions I wanted to ask was, how long did it take you to get strong at climbing again, the new normal, right? And then where would you put your climbing level now as you've developed the new way of doing it?
Well, it took years. And like I said, the mind-body connection was the first battle because your body's just sending out warning signals. And, you know, you have nubs that have skin grafts on them. It's going to be painful. Don't climb on the rocks. Don't do that. Don't grab that. And then, you know, so there was a lot of pushing through that. And of course, there was a lot of pushing through pain in general, because anyone who has lost a fingertip. So there was a lot of pushing through pain. And then it was understanding my new grip, because my shortest finger is my middle finger on the right hand. And the thumbs just really kind of don't get involved. And so it's like, how am I going to hold on to these holds again? So that was another part of it. And then also my reach was shorter. I lost both of the length on both of my middle fingers and ring fingers. So you would try to climb a problem that you've climbed before and reach out and you're like, oh, wait, the hold's further away now.
Oh, no.
So there was a lot of things. And honestly, I would say that took a good solid 3 years of making my brain and my body wrap around these things. And skin grafts don't toughen up like regular skin. Your skin has DNA and it belongs to a certain part of your body. So, you know, groin skin doesn't toughen up like the skin on your fingertip does. And it's in charge of what it does by its DNA. So even if you do get it a little tough, it goes back to what it knows how to do, to its basically chemical makeup. And that's very challenging. I still to this day climb with a lot of tape on my fingers, not as much as I was using when I first got into it. So it took years to understand and overcome a lot of those things. And then eventually I started just surprising myself and my husband, and we're like, wow, you just did this kind of notoriously hard V5 that I never even did beforehand. So, beforehand I had climbed like V10, V11, and now the hardest I've climbed is V8. And I've fallen off the end of my V10 project at Waco. This year it was so sad that we left without me sending it. But I'll get another chance next year, good Lord willing, But I'm not getting any younger, so I will, I guess, tell the world that's listening that I'm now 52. And that's not easy. It's just you need to give yourself a lot of grace and a lot of rest, more rest than you want to give yourself. Yet you still have to keep going enough that you're maintaining everything as far as muscle mass goes. So I wind up training more now after the accident and to this day than I ever trained beforehand, because you're just young and you kind of have it. Now you have to work to keep it. And I knew that after the accident as well. I knew that obviously it was going to be way harder for my fingers without fingertips to be able to hold on to rocks. So I knew every other part of my body needed to be 10 times stronger than it ever was just to pull this off. So I've been pushing really hard for the past, it's going on 9 years now.
I think many people would have just said, okay, time for a new sport. This is hard. I'm not optimized for this right now. Maybe it's time to do something else. But you kept climbing. Do you remember having those internal dialogues?
I never did. Even with the 4 fingers, I was like, how will I be able to climb like this? So I, for some reason, never thought about giving up. Instead, I always thought about, will I get the chance to try this again? The first few times that we went out, it was hard, it was painful. I mean, obviously some of my first climbs were done on plastic on our climbing wall in our garage. And then eventually, 1 week shy of a year anniversary, I did my first outdoor climb. And it was one of the hardest things I ever faced and did in my life. And it just made me want to try harder.
Wow. You are a very determined, tenacious woman. I can tell. It's so impressive, Melissa. But I also think it's fun that you found your thing with rock climbing. It was so much a thing that you're like, no, I am willing to work my butt off to make sure that this is what I continue to do. What was it about rock climbing that grabbed hold of you like that?
I mean, maybe it's just going back to that 26-year-old that couldn't run around the lake. I needed that light. I needed that fire. There wasn't a fire. It was dim by alcohol in a smoky bar. And I needed that fire. And once I had that fire, I didn't want to let it dim again. I do agree that, well, you didn't quite say this. It is pretty ridiculous that I have not, given myself a little bit of a break and said, well, you're going to open a restaurant. You're going to do all these other things after 6 months after the accident. Maybe you should pump the brakes on climbing and give yourself a break. But I've just never been one to take that path. So I'm just happy that I had the tools, I had the support, I had the tenacity, I had the drive to go on. And it was humbling. It was sad. There were plenty of tears. I felt like maybe people looked at me at the boulders and said that maybe this girl needs to stop climbing. Why is she out here trying to climb when she's bleeding and she has nubs? But no one ever thought that, that I know of. Most everyone said, wow, this is amazing. I can't believe it. A big part of it was that I got the chance to try. So I write about this in the book that I remember the electricity coming in me and grabbing hold of me so vividly. And I died a little bit, and I saw the tunnel in the forest, and I came back. So I had no doubt that I died, that I was dying. There was nothing I could do to save myself. And when I got that chance to come back, it gave me so much gratitude, the fact that I got to live and that I got to try. And I feel like that fueled me to continue to push on with everything else. Because a lot of people don't get that chance. That's what I heard in the hospital over and over again. We don't see burns this bad from electricity because most people just die. So I was extremely lucky to not die and to get the chance. So I would come full circle. I would go out rock climbing. I would be super, obviously afraid beforehand, nervous, sad, intimidated, even before I started climbing, crushed. And then I would start climbing, and you do just get this like vibration, this kind of something that completes me a little more when I get to try to climb. And I would get to feel that sensation again. And to me, that was the biggest gift. And maybe that was just doing a warm-up. But it was a huge gift that I got to try. So I wasn't going to give up on myself if I got that for some reason. I don't know what the reason is why I got to come back and try. I'm sure it's not rock climbing. I'm sure it's not opening a restaurant. Maybe it's the book, maybe it's sharing, how to get through a bad time with people. I don't know yet.
That's amazing. Twice you've mentioned now, I saw the tunnel, I saw the trees, I saw the forest, I think was the quote. Do you mind explaining a little bit more of what you experienced there?
Well, connected to the electricity, for anyone who doesn't know, when you're connected to the electricity, you're frozen. You can't move. You can't do anything. But my mind was aware of what was happening. I knew I made a mistake. I knew I couldn't move. I thought about screaming. I thought about shaking my hands and maybe dropping one of the clips I was desperately clenching onto now, whether I wanted to or not. I thought about falling over. Maybe one of them would get dislodged, but I couldn't do anything. And so my last thought was, I'm going to die. I'm dying. Like this really sucks. Like I'm dying before I get to open my restaurant, which ironically was what I thought of. And then everything went black. And then all of a sudden I was in this beautiful forest. And I'm a very vivid dreamer. And so I looked around. I was just captivated by the forest. It was just gorgeous. It was these really high trees with dappled sunlight coming through, kind of hitting these ferns on the forest floor, lighting everything up. And it was just gorgeous. And I was kind of like just in such a peaceful, happy place in this forest. And then I turned and I saw a tunnel hanging in the middle of the forest in front of me. And the tunnel was dark. And there were these inky figures in between me and the tunnel. And I said to myself, is this a dream or is this real? And I answered myself and I said, no, you're a vivid dreamer, but I'm pretty sure this is really happening. And that's when I just said, well, if I can get out of here and get back to help, I think I could be okay. And I want to get out of here. And that was that. And then the tunnel in the forest disappeared and I opened my eyes, and it took me a while to kind of figure out where I had landed, but I was face down on my driveway next to the machine. So I definitely died a little bit and got to witness all of that, and I got to come back. And like I said, that just knowing that and seeing that and feeling that desperation and seeing the what I think is the other side, yet having the chance to come back, left me shockingly grateful.
I paused there for just a moment, just to kind of let that soak. I have heard from other people who have been to the other side and back again, and they have a variety of experiences, but they all are very similar. They overlap a lot. It's kind of like we have a variety of places on our planet, right, that we can experience. But the thing that I've heard in common is what you just said, gratitude, living life with a sense of gratitude. There's also an element of, I'm not going to take this life as seriously. Instead, I'm just going to celebrate it more, make sure that love is a big part of my existence. How do you think that you were changed by that experience?
Well, it changed my whole life. Obviously, I was altered physically from it, but it gave me the strength of what I needed to climb through.
Which is the name of your book.
Yes.
Okay, Melissa, so this book just published.
Yes.
How exciting. How long did you work on the book?
I started writing it pretty much from the day of the accident on in a way. Well, maybe not the day of the accident, but in the hospital on. So when I first got my hands for the first time, when I saw my hands for the first time in about a month and a half of being in the hospital and going through a ton of medical procedures, the doctor said, "You can start using your hands now." And the first thing I said was to my husband, "Can I please have a piece of paper and a pen?" So the first thing I did was write, and my first words are in the book. So in a way, it started then. I couldn't necessarily continue the writing at that time. I did, but it was very distant. It was super cold. It was, I left the hospital, this happened to me. But before this, I wrote all the time. Being a sponsored athlete, I had a blog. So I thought that was really interesting. Like when I was writing the book, it helped me go back to certain really powerful things in my life that I could refer to. Like I talk about how my husband and I don't have children in the book. So I talk about our infertility and IVF journey. And I was able to go back to my blog and pick that out, because that's like 6 years later, right? So you don't remember exactly how horrible you felt or how all of those like impactful emotions you felt at that time when you're going through them. But because I wrote about them in the blog, I had those emotions that I could tap back into. So in an odd way, I wrote the book even before the accident, and then starting in the hospital and then coming home from the hospital. In 2019, Adidas sent me to a writing clinic at Rock and Ice where I went and I told them that, "Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. You're going to help me write an article, but I'm writing a book." And they said, "Well, no, you're really here to write an article." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but I'm writing a book." And they were like, "Okay, so do you know that Into Thin Air started as an article?" And I said, "Okay, great, I'll write an article." And so we worked on an article, and it did get published in Rock and Ice. That was back in 2019. And so that definitely was a catalyst that, yes, this story needs to be shared with people if I can help people. Kind of like what I said, why did I get a chance to come back? For rock climbing, to open a restaurant? So I felt like maybe sharing my story, I could help people. So then I had to stop. Who could write? Who could write during a pandemic? Who could be creative and thoughtful and introspective when you're just sitting there scared to death every day of,
Right.
I sacrificed my life for this restaurant. Now, am I going to be able to make this restaurant, come through the pandemic? I talk a lot in the book I share about my, how my family helped me open the restaurant financially. My family's finances are tied up in this restaurant. So I had to, like everyone else, right, kind of put life on hold to a degree and just get through the pandemic. And then I picked writing back up again it was probably towards the end of 2021, 2022. And I was able to get a literary agent in 2023 who found me a publisher with Falcon.
Oh, and wonderful. And where can people find the book now?
It's everywhere. I like to tell people to ask their local bookstore for a copy, so you're supporting local. But it's also on Amazon, it's on Walmart, it's on Target, it's on Barnes and Noble, booksellers, and BAM online.
Congratulations. How exciting.
It's exciting.
What do you anticipate? I'm just curious. How do you feel about it? I mean, it's just releasing, so
It's
how do you
crazy.
feel about that?
It's scary because not only, I'm putting my whole life out there because I can't just start with my accident and I'm in a hospital. People have to understand who I am, why this is
Right.
impactful that she's in the hospital. So it's my entire life. And I tried not to prolong it for people in about 260 words, pages. And it's scary. It's truly scary putting your whole life out there, including your writing and your writing skills and talent. So, but it's been really well received. So that's fantastic. And people seem to love it. And I've gotten a lot of reach outs and comments and questions, and I have a whole website that goes along with it. So if people really want to see the gory pictures, if you want to see me riding a stationary bike with my arms sewn together, if you want to learn about all the crazy medical journey that I went through, it's all on the website. And I was really excited too that Falcon kept, I had my surgery notes in there, and Falcon kept them in the appendix. So I believe it's 8 surgeries in total, are all in the appendix of the book, straight from the surgeons.
Amazing. It's quite the comeback story. It really is. Like I said, I think so many people may have just said, I'm going to have to find another sport. But instead, you're rocking it, literally. It's so cool.
I love it. And I'll go down with the ship. I mean, I know one day age will win, hopefully, right? If I live long enough, that age will win. But I'm okay with it. I think at this point, whenever it's time to hang up my hat, I will be able to do it gracefully now.
Oh, well, Melissa, that's a beautiful place, I think, to wrap it up. You're such an example to us. Life dishes out some really nasty things sometimes, but your tenacity to continue on, to do the thing you love, to keep life rolling, and then to share it with the rest of us so that we can find encouragement from your struggles and your successes. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad I got a chance to be here and share the story.
So, Melissa, we talked about your book, but how can people get in touch with you otherwise? I'm sure you have a website and social media, so tell us about that.
I have to admit, I'm not a TikToker, so Instagram is probably the best way, and it's Melissa I. Strong. But my website's also another avenue, and on my website you can see all about the restaurant transformations. You can see the Melissa before, during, and after. So warning, you can see all of the gory hospital pictures and the burnt bones and all of that. And you can follow the journey of now publishing a book. So it's melissaistrong.com.
melissaistrong.com. Well, thank you. I say this at the end of every show. It almost seems trite, but I think that Melissa would agree that it was about getting out there, doing the thing you love, right? So until the next show, make sure you do get out there and have some fun.